And to talk about that, I'm joined by Ambassador Mohan Kumar on the show. He's a former senior diplomat. Thank you, Ambassador Kumar, for being on the show. As the world, as protectionism resurges around the world, how will these agreements, these free trade agreements that India has signed with, ranging from the UK to countries in the Gulf, Oman to New Zealand, to the European Trade Association, how will they boost the India's trade access and their access to India as a market?
So thank you very much, Amritpal, for having me. I think it's important to understand the backdrop against which India has been embarking, as your correspondent said, on a signing spree, as it were, of FTAs. The first thing to understand is the multilateral trading system embodied by the WTO, the World Trade Organization, is in the ICU. It has not been functioning well, and every attempt made to reform the WTO up until now has failed. So, if the multilateral trading system is not functioning well, that means MFN is in trouble. If MFN is in trouble, it is also because of the tariffs which have been imposed by President Trump following his own logic. In these circumstances, the name of the game is actually FTA, that is Free Trade Agreement. And for your viewers, the best way to define an FTA is that it is an exception to the MFN rule. It is not for everybody. It is only for those people who signed that agreement. Concessions are granted only to countries which signed the FTA. Second point to note is there has been a geopolitical weaponization of trade. Trade is no longer MFN. Trade is no longer based on globalization, that you have an iPhone and you import 10 parts from 20 different countries and make an iPhone. That model is gone. If there is a country which is not a reliable supplier of these products, how are you going to make your iPhone? So there is the concept of resilient trade. And if you have resilient supply chains and trade, then again, you will need FTAs. The other thing India has done is that in the past, India had signed FTAs to the east of India, which is Singapore, Malaysia, ASEAN, Japan,
Right.
Korea, etc. All the current FTAs we are signing is to the west of India. That is, your correspondent mentioned UK, Australia, Canada, Oman, and Saudi Arabia, and so on. They're all to the west of India. And that is because we believe that our manufacturing can compete much better if we have FTA with those countries. Last but not least, I think the two important prizes to come in 2026 would be the bilateral trade agreement with the United States and the long pending FTA with the European Union. All this will diversify the trade opportunity for India, and it will enable India not to depend on one, two countries, but to have as many markets as possible, as diversified an export basket as possible, so that we can achieve a good GDP of $10 trillion at some stage.
Okay. But do these FTAs also signify a political realignment, as you hinted that, given what Donald Trump did, unleashed the tariff war, or not just India, but many countries around the world, in this new world order, do they signify a political realignment?
100%. You don't do an FTA unless you can trust your partner. So if you're doing an FTA with countries like New Zealand, you're doing it countries like Australia, you're doing it with countries like UAE, you're doing it with countries like UK. So they are either major partners or partners you can trust. So trust is an important aspect. And you are right, geopolitics comes into the picture because of a certain unpredictability of American trade measures, if you like. Europe is also looking to diversify its export basket, and India is making use of its large market and its potential for receiving imports, while, of course, taking care that dairy and agriculture is not exposed to undue competition, we are trying to open up our market. I also want to make the point, Amritpal, that the Indian manufacturing has to be exposed to foreign competition.
Okay.
It's only then that the country will become competitive. You can't protect every industry. I can understand why agriculture and dairy is protected, but you can't protect every industry. Industries must be exposed to foreign competition, and it's only then that they will become competitive. One way of exposing them to competition is free trade agreement, because you expose them to competition gradually, which is much better than exposing them to the complete law of the jungle, if you like. So, from all points of view, India will emerge much stronger because of these FTAs. One last point, if you allow me. This will also mean that India has to carry out deep economic reforms within the country, which I am very happy the government has done. Take, for example, note of the labor codes. 56 labor codes have been reduced to 4 labor codes. That is one important reform that has been carried out. GST reform is an important reform that has been carried out. I am looking forward to 2 other reforms in 2026. One is the power sector, and the other is the land acquisition of land. If we can carry out these reforms in addition to some reforms in agriculture, then India will be a top-notch trade player because of the size of our market and the potential that exists. We can really create win-win scenarios all round.
Ambassador, but the size of the market is, yes, one thing for especially those in the West planning to do, trade with India. But that also brings in the baggage of the trade imbalance. How do these FTAs factor in addressing that concern of India?
No, you're absolutely right again, and that is a very, very good question, because one of the problems we have had with the FTAs to the east of India that we did with ASEAN, Singapore, Japan, Korea, etc., was that we were not able to export so much to these countries, but those countries were able to export much more to India. That, of course, partly was a reflection of the manufacturing competitiveness or lack of it, but it also means those markets had non-tariff barriers, which is why in the FTAs such as the ones we have signed with EFTA, for example, the European Free Trade Area, we have requested them to commit to $100 billion investment over 15 years. That is one way to go about it, Amritpal, because if it is not possible to do a straight transaction between tariffs, we can introduce other things like investment. And that is an important aspect, because India needs investment, we need jobs. So that is one model that we have followed, where if it is not, for example, those countries already have 0% tariffs. So you really can't take more advantage of your exports. So the only way to do it is to be creative about these FTAs. And I'm very happy that the government of India has sought to be very creative by introducing things like a committed investment from trading partners, so that we open up our market, maybe 80% of our tariff lines, and in return, because their tariffs are already low, they commit to a certain investment to be made over a certain period of time.
Ambassador, given that our previous agreement, experience with FTAs, where they basically codified the existing trade flows rather than generating new significant trends, how do we deal with that threat in the FTAs that we're doing now, bringing about reform within our country? As you say, you need to be competitive in manufacturing. Protectionism is not going to get you far because it's not going to sell.
So the first thing that we have to understand is a few sectors can be protected. Every country has a few sectors which are protected. So if you take Japan, even an advanced country like Japan, its agriculture sector is highly protected. You can't export rice easily to Japan because the duties are almost 100%. Similarly, Korea, there the agriculture is very, very strongly protected. And these are reasons which have to do with food security and so on. The problem with India has been that it is true that quite a lot of sectors have been protected because of historical baggage. So, what we are doing is gradually we are exposing our industry to competition. While we do this, I think we should also take care of reskilling our people because there will be some job losses in some sectors. I don't want to pretend that reforms are completely cost free. There is a cost to be paid. Every other country which has reformed, like China, has paid a huge cost. Reform is not free, it is cost, it is cost intensive. The question is how the government can intervene to protect people with job losses, reskilling people, move the labor from agriculture to industry. We have too many people in the agriculture sector, Amritpal. You can't, we are the only major country which has 40 to 50% of the population which depends directly or indirectly on agriculture. Such a thing does not exist in any other major country except sub-Saharan Africa. So we have to move these people. And in any case, if you talk to the children of farmers, they don't want to be in agriculture. They want to do other things in life. So I think we should promote the movement of labor from agriculture into industry, which is why we have been saying that the share of manufacturing in our GDP has to be at least 25%. Unfortunately, it has been around 15 to 17% for the last 10 years. It is not showing much signs of increasing. Now, with these FTAs, and the massive reform that has been carried out by the government in 2025, likely to do it in 2026, I think manufacturing will get a big boost. You already know about the production linked incentive schemes, for example. Those, I think, will help move this labor from agriculture to industry so that then your manufacturing will become competitive. And simultaneously, you will have to also reskill your labor. You will have to invest in education. You will have to invest in training. You will have to do vocational training, for example. All these things.
You'll have to invest in research.
Absolutely.
Very heavily.
Research as well. And we are not doing that much in research, for example, compared to US, China, and many of the European countries. So that is something that we have to do as well. So it is a holistic approach to trade. It is not just signing an FTA with Oman or with UK and then suddenly it's a panacea that your exports increase and it becomes a land of milk and honey. No,
it's not going to work like that.
It really requires a lot of hard work. The government is fully aware of it. I think what we need is a whole of the government approach so that we can tackle it sector by sector to expose them to competition and make them competitive.
All right, we leave it there. Ambassador Mohan Kumar, many thanks for being on the show and sharing your insights with us. Thank you.